Welcome to The Road. This is a weekly podcast of All Saints Lutheran Church. I'm your host, John Pedersen, and I serve as pastor. Each week, we reflect on faith, life, and navigating the road ahead. The language of journey is common when we think about life. It has its joys and challenges along the way, and we all need a little encouragement and guidance at times to keep us going. There's a word in the Bible, asphalia, which means truth, but it's the same root word we use in English for asphalt, if you can believe that. It's a solid surface that makes travel easier and more assured. And so every week we're going to be exploring elements of faith and life that keep us on the road. Faith isn't about living a perfect life. It's about finding our way, getting through rough spots, but seeking out those great vistas too. You can find my weekly message here, but you'll also find special conversations with guests who have insights on things like wellness, parenting, and living with unique purpose. If you appreciate this podcast, remember to subscribe where possible and share it with a friend. Here's this week's message. Keeping a singular focus is a trait that many successful people possess. Leadership guru Stephen Covey once said, "The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing." If there was one thing you could accomplish, what would it be? If you could move mountains, put aside all distractions and worries, remove all barriers and naysayers, what is the one thing you would want to get done? There's incredible power and purpose when we focus. From a spiritual perspective, singular focus is nothing new. In one of his collected prayers, Christian theologian and philosopher Soren Kierkegaard spoke about the need to will one thing. He wrote, "Father in heaven, what are we without you? What is all that we know, vast accumulation though it be, but a chipped fragment if we do not know you? What is all our striving? Could it ever encompass a world but half-finished work if we do not know you? You, the one who is the one thing who is all? So may you give to the intellect wisdom to comprehend that one thing, to the heart sincerity to receive this understanding, to the will purity that wills only one thing. In prosperity may you grant perseverance to will one thing. Amid distractions, collectedness to will one thing. In suffering, patience to will one thing. You that gives both the beginning and the completion, may you early at the dawn of day give to the young the resolution to will one thing. As the day wanes, may you give to the old a renewed remembrance of their first resolution, that the first may be like the last like the first, in possession of a life that has willed only one thing." The one thing for Kierkegaard was to seek first the kingdom of God, to remain committed to God in all that he did. He goes on to acknowledge that this often doesn't happen despite our attempts, and he asked in that prayer for renewed courage to do so. Whatever our singular purpose is, there can be great power in focusing on it above all else. Again, what is your highest and greatest desire? There's value in thinking carefully about what that one thing is when we're young and in our middle years and in our later years. And I ask you this question today because the value of a singular focus for us is an axiom that many of us know either explicitly or implicitly, and we can find grounding for it in many places, including even in our own Christian tradition, as Kierkegaard says. And yet, if we're to embrace that value of willing one thing or going all in, as we sometimes say, there are important caveats we should also be aware of. The truth is that as much as my own calling and life as a pastor reflects an all-in approach to faith and the values of faith and the mission, I find myself uncomfortable, actually, with Kierkegaard's language of willing only one thing. As much as we might recognize the value of a singular focus, we also see the potential pitfalls of a narrow focus. It makes for a bit of a conundrum in the end, And so the question is how we maintain focus without neglecting other important priorities and people. In the story I read from Matthew 15, we see Jesus seeming to embody this question. Jesus and his disciples have traveled to the region of Tyre and Sidon, which was located on the Mediterranean Sea. And at the time of Jesus, this region north of Israel was still the Roman Empire, but it's part of Syria, a part of Syria called Syria Phoenicia. It has its own history. It's in modern-day Lebanon, and there was animosity between the people of Israel and the people of this region. Right away, the Canaanite woman who has heard about him comes and falls at his feet. She was a foreigner, a Gentile, and so ritually impure by the religious customs of the Jewish people. But she's drawn to him, and she begs for mercy and for help with her daughter, who she says has an evil spirit. But he doesn't answer. Silence. He appears focused on something else. To use an earlier quote, the main thing. His disciples come and urge him to send her away, saying, "She keeps shouting after us." Jesus, seeming to stay on mission, says, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." He has a singular purpose, and apparently this woman is not part of it. But then she comes and kneels in front of him again, pleading, "Lord, help me." We're used to Jesus showing compassion, but instead we get a very difficult response from him. One that to our ears sounds actually a bit offensive. It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Did he really say that? We want to make sense of that statement somehow. On one level, we can understand a need to stay focused on his mission. This isn't the only passage where he has to set boundaries to care for himself and his disciples. Jesus probably could have taught and healed without any break for weeks or months on end at times. Jesus is human. It's important that we understand that. Jesus, is he tired and burned out? Is this a moment of frustration for him when the words that come out aren't as thoughtful and compassionate as we've come to expect? Jesus was human, and more than most of the stories in the gospel, we see that here. But at the very same time, we can reflect on how we want to respond to the people that we encounter, like the Canaanite woman. How would we choose to respond? What's remarkable is the woman's own strength and her own singular purpose. In the face of what seems like a thoughtless comment from Jesus, she says, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs from the table." Jesus takes notice. "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done to you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. The whole encounter begins like it's a distraction, but becomes an important part of Jesus' mission in the end. Jesus does ultimately embrace Gentiles, non-Jews, as part of his mission, as do his disciples after he's gone. As a result, most of us are here today. Which brings us back to where we started. As I reflect on our modern landscape, I think a lot of us don't have a problem with adopting a singular focus. That's not quite our challenge. Perhaps at one time, faith and religious commitments were that top priority for many. I would venture to say that is less the case today than it was at one time. Some might point out shortcomings of traditional religions as an example of why that shouldn't be our primary focus. Instead, some would suggest our entire commitment should be to any number of things. Could be family, or to political or social transformation, or to our inner contentment. All important. In fact, the number of other things we can elevate above everything else is actually limitless and very personalized. What we choose to make the greatest and highest thing can, in effect, become our personal religion. And yet, the potential pitfalls of placing one thing over and above everything else still remains, regardless of the object of our attention and energy. Even if the object of our entire will and energy may be incredibly worthy, it can still cause us to overlook the needs and pleas of someone in front of us, like the woman who pleaded at Jesus' feet. It would be convenient to say that the entire encounter Jesus had with the woman was just a show, that he intended to help her all along, and his response was simply an echo of what would have been expected in that day and age, and that he responded this way initially to kind of get that out on the table for everyone to acknowledge, so that he could get the hardened response out in order to bring people along on a different kind of response in the end. Some have suggested maybe that's what happened with Jesus. At times I've thought, well, maybe that's what was going on here. But while that's possible, I don't personally think that's right. It certainly doesn't have to be right for us to find value and appreciation for what Jesus does in this passage. Instead, what the encounter might show is that if we are to embody a singular focus with our lives and work, we need others to bring their passions and commitments to the table as well. That we can't cover all the needs of the world ourselves. We can't see and appreciate all the needs on our own. We need each other, otherwise our focus will be too narrow. We need other voices. Even Jesus needs to hear other voices, even the voice of a foreigner, a Gentile, outside of his faith. It's what Paul writes about when he talks about the community of faith, like a body. Not everyone can be an ear or an eye or a foot. We need people who see things differently than we do and have different abilities and interests. The body does not consist of one member, but of many, according to Paul. You don't have to stop being who you are or being committed to a singular purpose. You simply have to make space for what others offer as well. And regardless of the reason that Jesus initially dismisses the woman's voice in pleading, what he does show is the ability to change, to begin to see from a new perspective, to adapt, to find value in a new perspective, to be transformed. He may have incredible focus on his mission, but even he makes space for other needs and perspectives. As laser-focused as many of us can be today, I sometimes feel like we've neglected the second value. It goes by different names: humility, repentance, selflessness. It's a gift, even if it comes late, even if it's imperfect and could be arrived at more elegantly. It's a reflection of one of the highest teachings of Christian faith: love God, but also love your neighbor. Loving God isn't complete unless you do the second as well. And so embedded within our commitment to Christian faith is the value of putting our singular focus and interests aside to love the neighbor. Focusing on the one thing we care about is most important, but what we might see as distractions and obstacles can actually turn out to be a source of creativity and energy. Yes, you have to focus, but sometimes in opening yourself up to something from left field or an opposing field, you actually find the missing piece you were looking for, or the piece that you needed that you didn't even realize you needed. Being able to thrive amidst change involves welcoming a variety of ideas and experiences and people along the way. God calls each of us to a unique and special mission, and we should pursue it with the passion of both Jesus and the Canaanite woman. But we should always be ready to learn something new and change. Amen. That's this week's message. You don't have to navigate the road ahead alone. You can join with others at All Saints. Visit allsaintsmtka.org for more information. Have a great week.